Hi, it's Kirby Sommers, and I welcome you to the Epstein Project podcast. Today I'm going to be answering some questions I've received about my latest book, Ghislaine Maxwell, an unauthorized biography. It's been available on my website for a while, and just recently it was uploaded to Amazon, and it's on Amazon Kindle, and you can order a physical book. Before I start, however, I want to thank Matthew Steeples of the Steeple Times. He, during the course of the last couple of months, I think, went ahead and published 4 preview chapters on his online magazine. And I thought that was just pretty nice of him. It did get the attention of several people, including Ghislaine's family, um, but I won't get into that right now. And it made it possible for some of you to understand that I was going to focus on the early part of Ghislaine's life, so that instead of all the stuff that we've read in mainstream media and seen in the court documents, what I wanted to do in this book is sort of try to find out what made her the person that she was. And so, one of the questions I receive is, what is my motivation for writing it in that way? And to be perfectly honest with you, Ghislaine Maxwell reminds me of my older sister. And the way she does that is, my older sister was someone that I looked upon as a second mom, and she betrayed my trust. It was my older sister who sold me into this human trafficking nightmare. And there's just something about the way that Ghislaine, her short hair, my sister has similar short hair, and the way that she just doesn't feel she did anything wrong. I see that with Ghislaine. I see that with my older sister. Um, they almost feel like they've done you a favor, when frankly, what they have done is they have turned your life inside out, upside down. Many people don't make it. I am lucky to be alive, literally lucky to be alive. And so I wanted to sort of go back and reconstruct her life. Now, this was difficult. It was difficult because there really wasn't anything online. Initially, there were some photographs of her when she was younger, and so I was lucky to have downloaded those because I have been working on other books on Jeffrey Epstein and Leslie Wexner and everyone in this horrific group for a while. And so when I went back to look for these photographs online, I noticed, well, wait a second, some of these are now gone. So I knew that because of the fact that she is in jail, awaiting trial, that there was a massive online scrubbing of her life. And I had noticed some stuff being scrubbed even after Epstein was arrested. But in any event, so I went back and looked at my own collection and tried to sort of piece together her life depending on this photograph and who's in this photograph. And then, I went back and tried to see, well, who's this person? And then I would, sort of recognize a face that maybe didn't have a name. And it was in that way that I started to lay out the pieces that would eventually form her life. Obviously, I went back and was able to retrieve, and again, because I had collected these initially, old newspaper articles and old things about her father, because her father was the most important man in her life. Literally, he was the most important man in her life and probably will always be that. So, what I went in there with, I had this knowledge of crime families. And I'm going to mention the name of a friend. His name is Sam Antar. He is the cousin of Eddie Antar. They owned the Crazy Eddie stores. If you live in the United States and in the New York City area, you would remember these commercials, these Crazy Eddie commercials. In their case, they were busted. I think somebody wanted to buy the company. They didn't necessarily want to sell it, but somebody decided, oh, we want to buy it. And then in the process of buying this company, which they thought was very profitable because that's what the book said, it was discovered, well, wait a minute, it's not as profitable. And then the FBI got involved, and then it was discovered it was a big scheme, and that in reality, um, the Antar family was skimming. They were, they had sort of like honestly, just dirty books, and they would take the money home, and it was like a family affair. And so the way that Sam explained it to me, it would be, it would be his family was in charge of counting the money, and Eddie's family was in charge of something else. And when he was a kid at the age of 14 or 13, he was sent to sort of learn the family business. And the family business was to be a crook. And so, in order to be a crook, he was then sent on to college in order to get his CPA so that he can help the family continue its crooked practices even more, but this time with a degree, and so that he can find better ways of making the family even wealthier by being crooks. Now he got caught. Another family that I don't know was the Studio 54 guys. So Ian Schrager and his partner. They were basically doing the same thing at Studio 54. They had, tons of cash that they had, sort of locked away in a compartment in the ceiling of their office at Studio 54. Roy Cohn was their attorney when they were caught for tax evasion. And so I kind of like looked at these as examples of crime families when I looked at Ghislaine, and I was looking at the life of her father and his life of crime. And there were so many parallels, with Robert Maxwell in 1969 when he tried to sell Pergamon Press to Lisco. It was discovered, oh, wait a minute, you've inflated your numbers. And then he was found unfit to run a public company. Well, so right there, he should his whole scam should have ended, but it didn't. Because when you're a crook, you really only know how to be a crook. And so eventually, because you're cutting corners and you are not doing things the proper way, you're going to climb back up. That's really the law of nature, regrettably. If you do everything right, maybe you'll get there in 100 years or 50 years, but you're not going to get there right away. So he continued to do things in a very shady way, and he got his family back up and going. And he had most of his offspring working for him. So Ghislaine was one of these. Isabel and Christine, the twins, were in there, and of course Ian and Kevin. Now, in my book, I concentrate on Ghislaine Maxwell, um, and pretty much she was someone who took her privilege very, like, sort of for granted. Well, very much for granted. I mean, she was given a credit card that she could spend as soon as she learned how to spend money. She started to just spend it indiscriminately. Um, she was given the nickname, I think it was Shopping Ghislaine, or I have it in my notes somewhere, but she was, eh, all she knew how to do was go shopping for new things. And, and while she was the favorite daughter of Robert Maxwell, Robert Maxwell was very busy flying around the world, meeting with other leaders of the world, because he was a spy. And so he was busy going around and trading secrets and doing all kinds of things. And so there wasn't really much family time. Whatever family time they had seemed to be very stressed. The mother was very, she acquiesced to her husband. And in her own book, she wrote that, well, she needed to present a unified front. And so if the children were going to be beaten, she had to do some of the beating herself. I give her credit for having said that. I think a lot of mothers shy away from ever admitting that they have been too harsh on their children. Um, but at the time, I want to remind you that at the time, it was normal. Parents did come down hard on their children. And so, it seems like Ghislaine, however, had extra time with her father, and she did this because he decided, oh, well, you know what? I can use her to sort of be my spokesperson, to sort of soften up my image. And that's what he did. So he started to use her in these promotional campaigns, and he started to use her to sort of um, be the ambassador for the football club. In the United States, we call it soccer. In the UK, they call it football. And he started to use her to send her on certain assignments that I write about in my book. So I'm not going to get into them because I want you to read what he sent her to do. And but the objective was that she should come back and tell him what she had observed, not just like verbally, but write it down. So she had to give him a report. So my analysis when I discovered this, and then I discovered it happened more than once, and that it was sort of a regular thing, I thought, oh my goodness, I see what's happening. It's another Antar family situation. It's the situation where he is teaching her his secrets, how he does business, that knowledge is power, and that's really the spy's motto, right? And when you're a spy, knowledge is power. And so that was fascinating. So it wasn't once I got into the meat of the story and figured out, okay, this is who she is, this is who her father is, then it was, let me connect these people, these people, these people. And you will see that throughout her life, she's very, very close to people who end up being in Jeffrey Epstein's book. So I think most of us know that the contacts that she gave Epstein belonged to her and her father. So, but then, that's her contribution to the Epstein side of it. I sort of end the book as she meets Jeffrey Epstein. I explain how she meets him, and I also think that by explaining how she really meets him, I dispel some of the myths that have been put out there by people who would want the world to think they met under different circumstances. Because if you think they met, for example, through Robert Maxwell, well, then that eliminates Leslie Wexner's role. And we can't have that because Leslie Wexner played a very big part. Don't forget, Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein would go around saying they worked for Leslie Wexner for Victoria's Secret. And so I just thought it was an interesting look at her life with her family and with her friends, and sort of how she got to where she got. It's my opinion that it's kind of again the same like the Crazy Eddie story, the Antar family story. You get caught for doing something wrong. Some people become, they start working for the government, sort of like Catch Me If You Can. that guy and Sama Antar, and you start helping the government. You have a plea deal, and so instead of going to jail, you have a plea deal. The difference between, let's say, Eddie Antar, Sam Antar, the Crazy Eddie scandal, the Studio 54 scandal, and the Ghislaine Maxwell scandal is that with the Maxwells, we have the spy angle. And so a plea deal is not necessarily, while it could still happen, it's very different when you have a spy angle. Plus, let's say with the Antar family and with the Studio 54 situation, nobody was going out raping children. That was not happening, or trafficking uh, human beings, or involving themselves with presidents and with royalty like Prince Andrew. This was not happening in those situations. And so, legally, and even in the sense of the public image, it's a different approach to that crime than the crime that we're dealing with, which, by the way, if it had not been discovered, if Jeffrey Epstein had literally just continued to work behind the scenes with Ghislaine Maxwell, um, we really were already so enmeshed into this dystopian society that some people have written about in the past, and that we feel that we're already in. But the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of children that go missing. I have a friend who is in the, I forget what his title is. He has a pretty high title, and he turned around and said to me, I didn't understand why there were so many children that went missing until I heard you tell me about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And now it clicks. I understand why so many kids go missing. And of course, my own life story of having been forced to be someone that I didn't want to be, and be with someone I didn't want to be. And I tell you about that in my memoir, The Billionaire's Woman. So we were already a society that was under siege. We were under siege by the predator class. And that takes me right back to Robert Maxwell. He said that in life you only have victims or predators. That was his way of thinking. So he wasn't going to be a victim. He was going to be a predator, and that is how he taught his children. So while we can listen to Ghislaine Maxwell's family tweet out really very lyrical things about how innocent their sister is, they're pretty much all the same. You can do your own research into each of their lives, and you will see that, there are some, like, red flags that you will find. But in any event, the book is available on Amazon, and I'm so excited that so many of you like it. Um, will I be writing a part two? I think so. I think that once this is out there, and we get a little further into a yes or a no on the trial, I will be working on a part two. In any event, again, like the video. Thank you so much for being so uh, forthcoming with your questions and your comments regarding this work. I think it's important to keep this front and center, um, because if we don't do it, I don't see too many people stepping forward and saying, hey, I'll devote all my time to bringing awareness and fighting human trafficking. So it's up to us. Anyway, it's Kirby Sommers for the Epstein Project podcast, and I want to wish you a good day. Thank you. Bye.